Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll get started in a few seconds. All right. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Simeen Mohsen, and I'm the Senior Managing Director at HBS Online, and it's my pleasure to be here with our new Senior Associate Dean, Professor VG Narayanan. I'll start with a quick intro of VG's background, and then we'll move into some pre-prepared questions, more of a conversation with VG, and we've also got some audience questions that we're going to answer as well. And towards the end of the session, depending how much time we have, we'd love to answer any questions from our live audience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the Zoom Q&A or on all of our social channels. We've got folks monitoring all those channels. So with the intro, Professor VG Narayanan is the Thomas D. Casserly Jr. Professor of Business Administration at Harvard Business School and the new Senior Associate Dean for HBS Online and HBS Executive Education. VG has been a member of the HBS faculty since 1994 and has authored multiple books and articles. Some of you in our audience may recognize him from his course, Financial Accounting, which is part of the Credential of Readiness, also known as CORE, HBS Online's 3-course Business Essentials program. So diving into our questions now. So VG, let's start with perhaps if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your background and what brought you to Harvard Business School.
Thank you, Simeen, and thank you for organizing this seminar. Very good morning to you all, and I guess if you're around the world, good afternoon, good evening, good night. It's terrific to be here. So my background, don't be fooled by my Scandinavian accent. I'm actually from India. That's a joke. I grew up in India, did my K through 12 education in the city called Madras, which is on the eastern coast in the southern part of India. And I also did my undergraduate education there. And then I went to the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, which is in the western part of India, to do my postgraduate diploma in management. And then in 1990, I showed up at Stanford to do my PhD in accounting. And, once you finish your PhD, you're looking for academic jobs, and I applied to different schools and, brought myself, moment of, indiscretion to, to apply to the Harvard Business School. I was not expecting an interview, but they surprised me and invited me to come here to campus to interview. So I still remember in, I think, April 1994, the first day they set foot on campus. I remember that day because it was very, very intimidating to come to HBS and see this very, very beautiful campus. But also the intimidation ties to my background. I grew up in India in a typical middle-class family, which meant that I never went to bed hungry, but also I didn't grow up with, refrigeration or air conditioning or a car or a music system or any of those things. And so suddenly to show up here at the Harvard Business School, which I'd read about a lot, was extremely intimidating. I was very convinced it was a serious mistake that Harvard was making just to interview me, let alone give me a job offer. But I decided to make the most of their mistake. And 29 years later, I'm still here. That was my journey to the Harvard Business School, Simeen.
That's great. And did you always know that you wanted to be a teacher?
I always enjoyed teaching from a young age. I think September 5th is coming up, which is Teachers' Day in India. And from a young age, if you're in the 3rd grade, you'd be asked to go teach like 2nd grade. And if you're in the 4th grade, you'll asked to go teach 3rd grade. And I remember teaching the number line. That's my earliest memory of being a teacher, is to teach a number line to, I suppose, like 3rd grade students. And I remember this one kid asking me, I understand like 1, 2, I have 1 pencil, 2 pencils, 3 pencils. What is this -1 pencil and -2 pencil? How do you, so he just couldn't understand what negative numbers were. And I think it really challenged me to try and explain this to someone live. And my teachers were sitting in the last row cracking up, seeing me struggle to explain to a kid 1 year younger than I what negative numbers were. So that's my earliest memory of teaching. I loved it. My dad used to teach in a high school before he became a lawyer. And I think that's something that I've enjoyed from a young age.
That's great. So, I mean, you helped obviously launch HBS and HBX as we were known back then. So the core program, which was our first course. So would love to hear a little bit about what inspired you to join that effort and to create your own course.
So there are two reasons to launch this. One sort of like more tactical, the other more long-term and strategic. The tactical reason was that we used to do analytics program on campus for our incoming MBA students. And we used to do it every August for 1 or 2 weeks. And we would teach them accounting, finance, and some quantitative methods. And it was a difficult program to staff because very often faculty and staff are thinking of going on vacations in August. And it is difficult to get students to attend because they were moving, getting married the last few days, before they're starting the MBA program. And I was like, why don't we move this online? And that way, our students can do it anytime during the summer, and we are not chasing faculty to try and staff this program. But also, if we do it for our students, why don't we open it up to the whole world? It's always bothered me, going back to how intimidated I was entering Harvard. It has this feeling of, outside of Harvard in particular, people think of this Harvard as like a very elite place. And the word elite always bothered me. In 1636, when Harvard University was founded, I don't think a bunch of people got together in a room and said, how do we deny education to 90% of the people who apply here? That couldn't have been the motivation for starting this place. It's just an accident that the number of applicants vastly exceeds our capacity in terms of classrooms, in terms of faculty, and but online, these constraints don't apply. So our mission here at the Harvard Business School is to educate leaders who make a difference in the world. Nowhere in our mission statement does it say, educate leaders who make a difference in the world, provided they're able to come to campus and spend 2 years here, right? So we can have an impact on leaders all over the world. And if we don't have these constraints of geography imposed by physical classrooms, etc. So online, we can take our knowledge or education to whoever wants it. So the unbounded nature of this opportunity, I found very attractive. And from day one, that is like a big deal for me.
Yeah, and I think, personally, when I came to the MBA program, I had been a consultant, so I didn't have to go to what we used to call like math camp or analytics camp back then. But I didn't have any accounting background. So I hired a tutor the summer before, I started and, got some of that training myself. And I think today, being able to take financial accounting would have been a much easier pathway than having to arrange for a tutor and coordinate that with my work schedule. So definitely a lot of value added with having that offering, definitely to that first intended audience. As you recall, you're recently named our senior associate dean, but you've been involved with HBS Online since its inception. So, in your mind, how has HBS Online changed since the early days of HBX? And so for those of us in our audience who are newer to us, HBX was our first name, the name that we launched under. So kind of as you track through the arc of, the last 10 years, what do you think have been some of those big changes in your mind?
So we vastly expanded the number of courses that we offer. We started with 3, now there are more than 20. So the increase in the number of courses is sort of the most palpable difference that you see. The numbers of students that are in thousands every year, that is also a big increase. But also, I think we initially thought it might be our incoming MBA students and maybe some liberal arts undergraduates who are getting themselves ready for the world of business. Some of them might do this course. All these people that we thought might do this course are doing our course, but also people we never thought would be interested, attorneys, physicians, architects, airline pilots. I've just been amazed by the wide array of professionals who seem to have a deep interest in learning subjects in business, related to business. And so that's been a big change, I think, over the last 10 years. So we are constantly evolving, I think. I think we're still taking only the baby steps of this journey for online education, but already there's a sea change.
And as you think about, you've been involved, as I mentioned, with us, but, what motivated you to take on this new role as Senior Associate Dean?
So I think, what excites me most is that I see a huge potential for online education. Again, one of these things that you may or may not know about me, Simeen, is that I did my undergraduate second and third years by correspondence education in India. That means I didn't go to college. I was doing this by correspondence. And so I always have a soft corner for people that are trying to learn remotely because of their circumstances in their life. And I feel like we're only beginning to scratch the surface of this. The potential is vast. The potential is immense. And I think we can take our knowledge under education and other opportunities that come from being associated with HBS to a large audience all over the world, and sort of use it in very complementary ways with what we do on campus. I can think of companies that bring sort of their senior team to HBS for executive education. And then for the next year, we use our live online classroom where it's still synchronous, but online education. And then for others that it's asynchronous, but for, it might be in the hundreds of thousands of employees that are doing these courses online. And while we started with courses that might have been 40 hours or 50 hours for core, I think the future is going to be in sort of like short form content for bite size, where someone says, teach me how to do this. And in an hour, or maybe even less, they want to learn about certain topics. And so I think we can create sort of like a bouquet of offerings where people sort of say, let me learn about these 10 topics this year or this month. And I would love for HBS Online as the go-to place where people wanting to learn something related to business come there and just because they're curious, just because it's something that they can apply immediately at their work. It's sort of like on demand that they would learn something on their, iPhones or Android devices while they're taking a train ride on the way to work. Use cases like this really excite me.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective as well, being here the past 7 years, there's so much more integration, right, with other efforts that are happening in executive education. And you, as you're not only the Senior Associate Dean for HBS Online, but also for executive education. So I think, seeing some of those opportunities, as you think about both kind of audiences that both organizations serve and sort of blending that. So, do you see that happening more as we go forward, whether with the MBA program or with executive education?
So for the MBA program, already we see that many students do core before they come here. In fact, for many students, the introduction to HBS is happening through HBS Online. I'm encountering executives who say, I did your course on HBS Online and I loved it so much. And I'm like, where could I get more? So that's why I applied to GMP. So it's sort of like people are using HBS Online to discover HBS, which is sort of a reversal of roles, from where we were 10 years ago when we were using the sort of like HBS brand name to go broader. Now people are discovering us through HBS Online. And many of our long executive programs on campus already require certainly the accounting course as part of their offerings. And so I feel that both asynchronous and synchronous online is going to be blended quite a bit with our on-campus offerings, particularly in executive education. So there's a reason why the dean thought like putting HBS Online and executive education together makes sense.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about, short content, more mobile access and things like that. How do you see online education evolving, whether that's with HBS Online or more broadly, where do you kind of see that going?
I think the future is incredibly bright for online education. There are some things where, you want to be able to look at a person in the eye and be synchronous and ask quick follow-up questions, etc. But there are a lot of other things where, particularly skill building, where giving people time, where they want to experiment and learn at different pace from each other. So there are multiple learning styles, and not everyone learns the same way. So I think online education has this huge opportunity because, it's like anytime, anywhere, you can take your education with you. You're waiting in line to pick up your child from school. You can be doing a 15-minute course and learning about something you didn't know, right? So there are a lot of people who are consuming knowledge and experience. Think of Netflix, what it has done for the world of entertainment. Yeah. People are thinking of something analogously for education. It'll be so cool that if I can learn some skill in the next half hour, and then I love it, I'm going to tell my buddies, like, I love this. And if I don't like it, I'm going to tell my buddies, stay away from VG scores, or, do VG scores. I love it. So that kind of experience, I think, is going to how online education is going to be shaped. So it's going to be very consumer driven, and it's a global marketplace. You don't have to, so the best courses may not be all created in one place. It's going to be a lot of competition across the world from different countries. And it's terrific for the students, participants, and consumers.
So in the context of sort of what you see coming down the pipeline, what are the top couple of opportunities that you see for HBS Online as you think about, what we should focus on? What are the top things that come to mind?
So we already talked about two things. I think sort of mobile, on-demand, short-form content is going to be one, focusing on the consumers. I think that's going to be a big growth area. The other is looking at businesses where they say, we want to cascade something throughout our organization. We want to be aligned on terminology. When I say something, I want everyone to, when I say design thinking, I want everyone to understand what it means the same way. So an organization says, like, let me come to team up with a school like HBS, and we want executive education, we want online education, and cascade it throughout the organization. I think these are the two top opportunities, one focusing on consumers, the other focusing on businesses, but it could go either way. But so those, I think, are the top opportunities in the short to medium term.
Yeah, definitely on the business side, I see that as well. Despite having, thousands of participants, I think all of us, yourself included, we run across people who say, oh, I didn't know that there was an option for my company to, have this as an opportunity to learn online for a group of people as opposed to individuals. So I think there is definitely a lot of opportunity still within that space.
I think generative AI is going to dramatically reshape this space as well. And for both audiences, sometimes someone says, like, okay, I didn't understand this. Can you explain it to me another way? And I think generative AI could help do that, and it almost feel like very customized how the answers are going to be. So watch this space. It's very exciting. Yeah.
So shifting gears a bit and just, thinking about the individuals who take our courses, whether it's through their organization or, funding the education themselves, do you have any advice for people who are who are kind of aspiring leaders?
So, there is many aspects to this. I think the skill and the knowledge piece of it, you can get into place like HBS Online. There are also courses that you can do on self-improvement that would help. But it's sort of like we have to think about learning as a lifelong learning model, where it's not like I did all this learning when I went to school, and then for the rest of my life, I'm just going to write off that. To learn to be a leader is a journey worth a lifetime. And therefore, you need to be ready to learn certain things. And that would happen only when you're encountering certain situations in life. In the current scenario where it's all about doing an MBA for 2 years and then you're off to the job world, most of the learning is happening on the job. I think that model is going to change, where as and when you're encountering issues that you didn't fully appreciate the nuance and the richness when you were, fresh out of college or doing your MBA, you might have the opportunity to go back either to executive education or to HBS Online and continue this lifelong journey. So I think, I met someone who had gifted their children online courses during the holiday season. And I think that's sort of the way we're going to see this, that we're going to think about this as lifelong learning. And that would also be my advice to people who are aspiring leaders is, don't think of learning as a one-shot opportunity. I've done my learning, now I'm on to the next phase of my life. Learning never stops. And the other piece of this, which we try to do at HBS Online and in our executive education programs, is learning how to learn. So in the case method, what you're doing is, how do I formulate a problem? How do I search for a solution? And how do I do that as a group? And that's the part we try to inculcate in all our platforms, all our programs, so that you're continuously learning, even while on the job, from your colleagues, from your co-workers. If you train yourself how to do that, you can make learning a continuous task. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think it's more, rather than getting the answer, it's the pathway to getting the answer. Like, how do you train your brain over many, many examples to think in certain ways so that you're always, given different scenarios and different problems in the work world, how do you get to those solutions? So, we also had the opportunity to get some audience questions ahead of time. And so a little bit of what you're talking is a great segue into the next question, which is really a two-part question around AI. And you mentioned generative AI. Obviously, that's a hot topic on everyone's minds today. So the first part is, how do you think AI is going to transform the future of online and executive education? And then the second piece is more around businesses and what are some ways businesses should be thinking about AI? So first on the education side as it relates to HBS Online, and on the business side.
So on the education side, I think there are going to be a couple of ways in which AI transforms education, particularly in the online space. It's one is searching, right? There's so many courses, so much content that's going to be created in the next few years. For people to find out what exactly they want to learn is going to be a challenge. And I think natural language processing is going to come in, where you go into a website or a mobile platform and you say, I think I want to learn, this is the problem I have, not sure what I should learn. And it sort of has a dialogue with you to then says, here's what we recommend for you based on your profile and what you've told me about yourself. And over time, it might learn about your preferences, what others in similar situations have done, and start making recommendations of programs and courses for you. The other piece is that within those programs and courses, there can be a lot more customization done. In the not so distant future, we might have a bot doing live instruction. There is a version of VG that works with John and says, starts interacting and asks questions to John in a Socratic method. Rather than give John the answer, just keeps asking John a sequence of questions till sort of John figures out the answer to his own question. Or, that might be the opportunity we might be getting to. So there's a lot of high upside potential in using generative AI, large language models in the field of education. For businesses, of course, I think it's going to fundamentally transform businesses. The same person can be much more productive You can use generative AI to create spreadsheet models, to prepare pitch books, to prepare presentations. I mean, the sky is the limit. And what we're finding is that people who engage with it and become very good at prompt engineering and sort of invest more in like, how do I do a plugin into my chat GPT, things like that, they get more out of generative AI. So the need to invest in sort of your human capital to learn generative AI has never been higher. And if you do that, your productivity and your efficiency is like greatly enhanced. And I think businesses and individuals will discover that, and we're in for an exciting ride there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't think of a field that isn't going to be impacted by, by this new technology, new approach overall. Another question that came in from our audience was, talking about new programs for HBS Online. You mentioned when we started had core and a couple of courses, and now we have 21 courses. We've also got our certificates of specialization, which people can earn if they take 3 courses within a particular topic area. And then we recently announced Climb in June. And for those of you who are not familiar, Climb is the Credential of Leadership, Impact, and Management in Business, so our newest credential program. Can you talk a little bit about the potential for that program and any future programs for HBS Online that you see on the horizon?
Yeah, so I think like universities serve like multiple roles, right? So one of them is, of course, imparting knowledge, but also they do other things. They assemble groups of students, and there's a networking opportunity amongst those students. They learn from each other, they form lifelong friendships. There's also things like credentials that they're able to put on their resume, and that helps them with job prospects. And core is sort of our first credential. We haven't done anyone in the last 10 years, but then Climb is going to be the next one. And I'm super excited about Climb because it's a much more comprehensive credential than core. Think of core as sort of the entry level. This is for people that might be further along. And in core, we don't have any electives. Here in Climb, we are going to give people the opportunity to sort of customize their journey and their educational experience, and also sort of have a cohort and sort of do a capstone project. And so there's opportunities to network and customize the program for yourself and work with like-minded people. So I think this is going to be a terrific opportunity. I'm super excited about Climb, and I know we are developing courses in marketing and digital transformation. So there's plenty of exciting stuff, I think, that's coming from HBS Online.
Yeah, and then the potential for shorter, more of that bite-sized, if you will, type content as well, because that's sort of the other end of the spectrum from a program like Climb, right? But to your point, there's many different need states out there for people who are looking for this education. So being able to provide that, I think, is important for folks. Another question that came in was around, how do you see the HBS Online certificate helping people advance, whether it's their careers or their personal lives as well. So, what are your thoughts around that?
So I think when we're very intentional in designing our courses and our content, we draw on our experience in the MBA program here at HBS and in executive education. So we have a sense for the skill set and knowledge that's helping people advance, and that's what we bring to online. So we have seen people from all walks of life who come here, take our online courses, and we have surveyed these participants in HBS Online to see like what kind of impact you've had. So one of the things, like 80% of the survey respondents said that HBS Online was a better experience than other programs. And 76% found HBS Online to be more impactful. Nearly 1 in 4 of the experienced professional growth, whether a career change, promotion, salary increase in the past 5 years, which they directly attributed to the HBS Online experience. So we are trying to constantly survey our past participants and learn from their experience and what they're finding helpful. So far, it seems to be, helping people advance, but I think it's for us too, it's a learning opportunity. We want to hear from our past participants say, this is what I find helpful. I hope you create courses of this sort, and we'd absolutely want to be responsive to their needs.
Yeah, definitely. And, we know our audience takes courses on other platforms as well, other online courses, and we're always looking to get feedback around what we could be doing better as well. So last question before I open it up to audience Q&A. Question came in from someone around programs for charities and nonprofits and what HBS Online's approach is towards that. We talked a lot about business, but as you know, our audience is much broader in terms of the types of people who take our courses.
So we do offer discounted pricing for organizations based on the number of employees enrolled in our programs. So in case you're interested in bringing HBS Online to your non-profit, please do reach out to us. And we're also focused on increasing our scholarship efforts to reach a broader audiences, right? There's more demand than we have financial resources for, but we want to reach as many people globally as we can. So we'll have initiatives that start rolling out in the next year to year and a half. So we are trying to, reach a broader audience that may not necessarily be able to afford HBS Online.
Yeah. No, I know that's one of our key priorities as we look into the next few years in terms of increasing that reach for the school's learning. So now we're going to switch over to some audience questions that have been submitted live. So the first one, question from Forhad on Facebook: how can online and executive education help future PhD or postdoc candidates? So interesting question there.
So I think I'm going to expand this to broader than HBS Online, right? I get, visits from my former MBA students who say, I'm thinking of a career in academia and I want to go do a PhD, but I've been working for 5 years and, I know like education is my calling. I want to be an academic, or I made enough money, now I want to give back, whatever their motivation, right? And one of the biggest challenges that I see in them is that they're sort of like forgotten their multivariable calculus and linear algebra and real analysis. So they have to go back and do such courses. Online is a terrific way to learn, not HBS Online, but online more broadly is a terrific way to learn those kind of skills in mathematics or economics or econometrics that they'll need for the research purposes in their doctoral program. Likewise, you might want to get some depth in the topic. You want to do your PhD in finance or marketing. There, you could come to a place like HBS Online and do some courses so that you know where you could be applying your research methods to. So in both places, I think online education can help people become better prepared for a doctoral program, and it will strengthen their doctoral program application.
So yeah, great advice there. So next question from chat participant Sahil, TUVG. So you've been on the board of various companies in Boston, and I work in one of them. My question is if you can share one piece of advice or any principle that one should follow as they begin their career here in Boston, which is the most talent competitive city in the world. So but generally there's many cities that would fit that bill in terms of, being magnets for talent and having a lot of talented folks. So I guess the question is, how do you stand out in that crowd?
Yeah, I think, very early on in your career when you're starting out, you need to focus more on investing than harvesting. And what I mean by that is don't be sort of short term. Don't go to the job where you're likely to get paid the highest. It may or may not be the right place. Think sort of about investment in your human capital. Where am I likely to learn the most? And that may be very different from the place who pays you the highest, right? And if you're focused on sort of being in the company of people that you can learn from, both peers and people that you report to, that'll stand you in good stead down the road. So think of it as sort of like continuing your education after your college or after your MBA for several years, be less focused on sort of monetizing your education and more focused on continuing to invest. People are working longer years and retiring later in life and continuing to learn throughout. But I think your mind is like best able to learn right out of college, but at work. And so you want to continue that education journey. So that would be my advice in Boston or any other city like Boston, where there are a lot of talented people out there.
Yeah, no, the early investments do pay off in many ways, unexpected ways, throughout the course of your career as well. So question from Pratik on Zoom. All the modules in financial accounting have been phenomenally detailed. Clearly he's in the middle of doing core. So his question is, what has inspired you to study and teach accounting? So I asked you a question more generally about teaching, but I guess specifically, what is it about accounting that drew you to that topic area?
Look, I think accounting is the bedrock of modern capitalism, right? If I look at how societies have grown, business plays a fundamental role in the world, right? We have maybe like 7-8 billion people in the world, about 1.5 billion that are in the cycle of prosperity. If you ever going to bring the rest of the population into the cycle of prosperity, where the next generation can hope for at least as good a lifestyle as the previous generation, then the world of business has to rise to that occasion and create these opportunities. These are going to be done by large, organizations, corporations, where ownership is separated from management, right? And that's sort of how joint stock companies were born in medieval Europe. And what facilitated that in medieval Europe was accounting. So I don't think it was an accident that accounting emerged in medieval Italy, in Venice. Look up Pacioli wrote the first book on accounting, because you had captains going on these ships and voyages when they would come back, and they'd have to render accounts to the financiers who stayed on the land and say, here's how much profit we made, and here's your share, and here's my share. That hasn't changed, right? This ability to separate ownership from management, this ability to align incentives, the ability to attract the right set of people, all of those things hinge fundamentally on financial accounting. So I think accounting plays a huge and crucial role in the world of business, and business plays a huge and crucial role in world at large in terms of alleviating poverty, etc. So I'm very inspired by this, that the role of accounting sort of in the scene in this broad context.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, for that inspiring note. So I think that we're probably at the end of our questions. I'm just trying to see if there's any others from our audience, but I think we're at time as well. So VG, thank you very much for spending this time talking a little bit about your background and your perspective. And thank you to the audience for joining us today. VG, any last words before we sign off for today?
First of all, thank you, Simeen, and thank to other organizers at HBS Online. And thank you to all the attendees for attending this. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. I'd love to hear from you. So if there are any questions that you think of, feel free to shoot me an email. I have the easiest email address in the world, vg@hbs.edu. I hope to hear from you, and thank you.
Great.